Hello everyone, this is the Getting Started tutorial for Metareal Stage Beta. So before we start looking at how to build virtual tours using Metareal Stage, I want to touch on a couple of techniques which are useful when shooting panoramas that will make your panorama tours navigate better. For the moment, Metareal Stage is a panorama tour editor. This means that you need to shoot panoramas, equirectangular panoramas, as the input images for Stage. Now these can be either with any 360 camera, such as this Theta S here, or indeed with a DSLR that's fitted to a panorama bracket. It is very important, because we're doing 3D reconstruction, to make sure that the panorama, that the camera is properly aligned on the nodal point of the lens, so that the geometry of the resulting panoramas is very, very accurate. Now, when shooting a tour, one thing it's very important to do is shoot panoramas both sides of any entrance and exit to any room, for example here and here. This will ensure that when the user's moving around, that they can get through the door properly without sliding through walls or being unable to basically stand in a doorway. The next thing is to probably to shoot at least one panorama in the center of each room. Now, if there's no furniture or other occluding objects in a room, and you don't necessarily want to be able to move around too much within a room, that's the kind of minimum you need to do, and that will work fine within Metareal. The next stage is to, if you have furniture in rooms, we suggest that you shoot on this kind of configuration, this kind of layout, to get some sort of navigability within each room, and also to make sure you've got good coverage either side of any occluding objects. Alright, now we're going to start this tutorial today from a blank project, but we're going to be using the Avenue de Gaspé panoramas from that tour, and you can actually install the completed project from the install sample project link here. But just to so we can go through the steps of getting started, I'm going to start with a blank project and upload the images myself. So in this case, we're going to create a new project, and that takes us to our project dashboard, and we can see we've got a variety of sections here. Top area deals with setting the location for the tour. We're using Google Maps. Then, as we build our project, we'll see our rooms created in the second section here. But to begin with, what we want to do is upload some source images. So I'm going to click on Upload, and I'm going to go browse to a folder with a set of images that we need. So these are all equirectangular images. Load these up. We're going to hit upload. Now that's going to take a few seconds to upload, so I'm going to pause the video while it does, and we'll be back in a sec. Now, as soon as that's uploaded, the images go into we'll show this cogs icon to indicate that they're processing. So we can see we've already got one processed, and this is where we add the metadata to the images that we need to be able to do reconstruction and build the tour. So we'll just pause a sec and come back when that's finished processing. So once those have all processed, we can now see we've got all the images in our tour loaded up in the source images section. And the way the authoring process works is we start by setting the default settings for our tour. Now, one of the pieces of information that's very important for the scaling of your tour to be accurate, so that when visitors are measuring things within the tour, we need to know the lens height, precise lens height of the nodal point of the camera's lens from the floor. So in this case, it was 5.537 meters. And I don't know what the nadir size was. We'll check that and come back and set that afterwards, but we'll leave it at 0.5 for now. So the process of building the tour starts with reconstructing the rooms from the panoramas and then connecting the rooms together. So we have the room editor for reconstructing the rooms and then the tour editor for connecting the rooms together into the tour. If for any reason your tour gets into a state where it's not working properly or you've got a problem, you can reset the tour and reconstruct it. And creating the tour is usually fairly quick because for the most part rooms snap together automatically. So this works out being quite a useful shortcut to cleaning up situations that can happen. So I'm going to go into the room editor. Now to start the room editor, I can either open it and choose images, or in this case I'm going to select a couple of images and I'm going to go new room. Now if I just click on new room, I replace my current page with the room editor and it loads up and we can see the set of tools we need, the panoramas we chose, and all the tools we need to do the reconstruction. There is, however, a better way of working which uses multiple tabs and involves less page refreshes, so it makes it much quicker to switch between different parts of the software. So I'm hitting back, I'm going back to my project browser, my project dashboard, and this takes a few seconds to load. And we want to avoid all the page reloading as much as possible. So we have what we call a multi-tab workflow. So back on my project dashboard, what I can do, I should have a new room here now, is I can hit Control on a PC or the equivalent on a Mac to create a new room, or in fact in this case to open my new room. So I'm going to hit Control and click on it, and we can see that we leave the project dashboard here and we open the room editor in a new tab. This turns out to be very useful for rapidly working multiple rooms, connecting rooms together, making changes, and opening multiple tabs at once means it's much quicker to switch between the two parts of the software. So here we have our two panoramas, and we'll see that our lens height has been remembered. We can go down here and we can check our nadir, and actually that nadir size is fine for the area that we're using. These nadir and zenith points have already been patched in these panoramas, so they look fine. So now I just need to choose which is the best panorama to be my reference panorama, and typically that would be the one nearest the center of the room. In this case I think we've just got two, so I'm going to choose this one. So I hit make reference, and now I want to show the alignment tools, and this allows me to align my room with the world grid, and as you can see it's not well aligned with the world grid right now, so I'm going to go around to here, and I think I'll just take this and line it up with one of the edges of the room, and this makes sure that when the rooms appear in the tour editor they're all well aligned together and easy to manipulate. So that's pretty good. Just make sure it's absolutely tight. Perfect. And now what I want to do is make sure my room is level. Panorama is level. It's very important for our reconstruction tools that the floor is as flat as possible. If your floor isn't flat, you won't be able to get a good reconstruction. So we're picking verticals in here and drawing vertical leveling lines. Most 360 cameras do level or attempt to level their panoramas somewhat, but they're not always level enough, and we need it to be super level so for the reconstruction to be accurate. So I'm doing 3 there, and we can actually go here to the leveling view and just check that out. I haven't really explained the user interface very well yet, but so over here we have the panoramas that are in our current room. We can add more panoramas from the panoramas loaded into the project. Here I can edit the room name. I'm just going to call this downstairs office. And here I've got the various visual guides that we're using to do the reconstruction. Here I've got the various different views. Panorama view is this one, so it looks like a normal panorama view. Plan view gives me a view which allows me to easily draw out my floor plans. And a leveling view allows me to check that the verticals in the room are actually level when I've leveled them. Over here on the right we have a tool called a helper. This is always contextual to whatever tool or whatever operation or object that's selected. In this case we've just got the panorama chosen and nothing else, so we're showing the panorama helper, and it gives us some information about the file dimensions, in this case some tools relating to lens height, nadir, and the alignment tools. Well, we're done with the alignment tools, so I switch those off, and the next thing we want to do is draw the floor. So we'll go to the plan view, and first thing we're going to do is click the draw tool, and we're going to start with, say, this point here, and I've now set a floor point. I've got two snaps. You can see over here protractor 1, protractor 2. So the protractor is this black thing here, and if I switch on the snap, we see we're snap 2 regular angles. I've got snaps for 2 protractors because I can actually have 2 points of context, and we'll see why that's useful in a minute. First of all, right now as I draw around, I really only want 1 protractor active, and that allows me to make sure that my room is absolutely square. Now if I switch on both protractors, I can actually make sure I'm snapping to that right corner in there. So now I know I've got a perfect room outline, and we can see the door here is poking into the room, which is just as we'd expect. So now I can go back to my panorama view and look around, and we can see that we've got a really nice, neat, tidy room. And in fact, I've just got to go over here and I want to set my ceiling height. So now we can actually measure the ceiling height, and because we've already got the lens height set accurately, we're now doing everything in actual world units. So now we've created a simple volume room, which is actually the first step to having a 3D reconstruction. The next thing I'm going to do is just pop to, in fact I'm going to add a couple more points so it's easy to identify what the orientation of the room is. So I'm going to put this here so we know where the door is. And now I'm going to go to my second panorama, and you can see we've automatically switched to the snap tool. This is another tool. This allows me to take my second panorama and align it to the position of the first room, and I can do that by clicking on floor points. We can see this is where the doorway is, so I know that this point belongs over here, and I can zoom in and out and get to whatever degree of precision I feel I actually need for this, but it turns out to be fairly easy to get things quite nice. We don't need to be too precise for panorama tours. It's really up to us to decide how precise we need it to be. So just going to quickly come back to here. What have we got here? So that guy, we've missed the corner a little bit, so we're just going to pop him over there till we get him right in the corner where we want him to be. That's right. And that's, we can add as many of these as we need to hold our panorama in the right place. And that looks lovely. So now we've got 2 panoramas matched, and we can see that the other panorama has now appeared in the space as a bubble in the scene, and we can now move between the 2 panoramas. So the next thing to do is add a bit more geometry to space, and we can do that most easily just by adding some volumes. And in fact, if I put that there, and I can use Control C to duplicate volumes, and I can drag them around in scale. The transforms we've got basically on volumes are scaling a face like this. Also I can move it, so if I click on a face I move it in the plane of that face, and I can also rotate, so if I click on a corner here I can orient it around the opposite corner. So that gives us very easy control for simple volumes, and you can now see that when I move we get an object that appears to move nicely, and although it's very simple geometry, if we switch off the volume marker, you'll see that the volume guide, you'll see that actually we don't notice how simple the volume is when we move. It works very well and makes the tour seem like it's fully 3D. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of those volumes really quickly. and there. We've now got, it's close enough. Pretty quick but quite serviceable reconstruction of this room. A few other things we can do is we're going to add some windows. So I drew the windows by clicking the corners. Again, click the corners. And we can see that all the corners are green, which means that they're not crossing a boundary, which is good. If I pop over here, I need to add a door. I go here to the door tool. In this case, I can select the wall as a doorway, and it automatically fits it. So we've got a door there, and if we had a handle, we'd be able to rotate the handle like that. I want to name the door because that's how I'll be able to snap them later. So in this case, we're going to say kitchen to office. So the next room we're going to do, I'm just going to go back to my project. In fact, we haven't named the project yet, so we're going to call this Avenue de Gaspé. The next one we're going to do is the kitchen. So I'm just going to choose all these ones with these nice kitchen units. So there's this guy, 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 and this one. Is that everything? Yeah, I think so. And that one as well, which is right in the entrance to the office. So select those. I'm going to hit Control and New Room. And what it's going to do is it's going to create the new room and open the room editor in a new tab. It's a few seconds to load. So we've got quite a lot of panoramas here. I've got to choose which one is going to be my reference pano. In that case, this is probably my best one. Check that we've got the right height and our nadir is all good. So now I'm going to make this into the reference, and we'll do the same thing. We'll take the alignment tools. Oops, very quickly. I'll pull this down to here, and then through to the so now we're aligned with the world grid, and then I want to make sure I've got some verticals. So draw a level line. Now you may find sometimes that the leveling solver doesn't give you a good result. This can happen for a bunch of reasons. Sometimes it just doesn't find a solution. It's pretty rare. Occasionally you'll find that you've chosen a vertical that might be pretty close to vertical but isn't really quite vertical, and that can sometimes cause the solver to throw up. And in that case, best thing to do is just delete the line in question. So for example, if I go and do this, we get a weird result. So I come back round, select and hit delete, and now I've got my and then go and choose another vertical, and it should solve nicely for that. That looks pretty good. We're just going to check with the leveling view, make sure everything is actually looking level. I'll check all the verticals, everything looks pretty good. So now we can switch to the plan view and hide the panorama tools. And now I'm going to draw my floor. So one thing that's interesting here in this room is we notice that actually this is actually, if I snap onto there, it's not actually quite straight with the other wall here at this end. So we're going to actually just draw that and do a little dog leg like this. And now I'm going to zoom in because I need to see what I'm doing quite precisely here. Still with the snap on, I want to make sure we're right at the edge of the wall there, because that's where our other door is going to connect. And then come back here, come to this corner, and then all the way down to about here. We can see that we're getting, we want to be sure we're right at the edge of the shadow there. And we're getting to the edge of the panorama here, so it's getting quite soft, but that's okay. We just need to kind of try and fit things in the middle of the pixels. Now over in this corner, we can't actually see where the corner is, but we have our 2 points, so I switch on my second snap, and the snaps will find the corner for us, so it makes it quite quick and easy to do. Go back to my panorama, check that, yeah, that's all good, back to the panorama view, and now we just need to set the ceiling height correctly. I do that from in the draw tool, pick it, choose it, and 2.59 looks about right. So there's my simple room. I'm going to quickly add these two volumes, which will make it much easier to register my Actually, let's do it from this corner. Now, because we're looking at a panorama and this is an image, not a real 3D environment, we need to always work from the front backwards in order to make sure our volumes fit. So in this case, I've got to get this corner right, these two corners right, before I try to do the back corners. If I get these right, then I know that when I fit the other ones, I'm actually doing the right thing. So I've got these right, so now I can go and do the back ones. And that one looks good over there. And then the other unit is the same size, so I just click on it and move this over. And again, look at the front side to make sure I got it in the right place. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now I can go to my plan view, and we can see that everything's fitting quite nicely here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go quickly and snap the rest of these panoramas, because they're level, because the camera is basically at the same height in all the panoramas. I really only need 2 snap points per panorama, which makes it go fairly quickly. So we'll just zip through that at high speed and come back to you in a sec. Okay, so now we've snapped all those panoramas. The little black lines have disappeared, indicating they're registered, and we've now got, whoops, still in the snap tool, we've now got panorama bubbles showing us all the different panos. And we can also see this one has a white line around it. That means it's the reference panorama. So there we go. It's pretty good. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to zip back over here. And I've got to start putting some doors in. So I need to put a door here to connect to my other room. So in that case, I'm going to select the door, and I'm actually going to go choose existing door, and I've got one in my scene right now, my project, and I'm going to place that door, and we're going to place it in there. Now, sometimes little slight variations in scale mean that things go past lines. So we've got a red line, and we just need to nudge this back until it goes green. And now that fits. And we don't really care about the opening, except to make sure that they're the same, and I think it was on that side before, so I'm just going to pop that around to there. The next door is a little bit more complex, because we want to create an opening that will allow us to join this room on to this room. So in fact, we're actually going to go here, and we're going to go select wall-less doorway and choose this big space. I'm going to make sure it's as thin as possible, and this is going to be opening kitchen to lounge, so that it's got a unique name and that I can find it easily. So that's that. Over here we haven't done the windows yet, so we're going to put the windows in, and these are rather lovely floor to ceiling windows. So I think I'll start this one at the top. The same height as the other one. Oh, for some reason that didn't fit. Sometimes if there's an object in the way, it won't be able to fit it automatically, and you can just drag it to fit. So same problem there. Because of the, so we can pull that back down, make sure we're green. There we go. And then if I come over here, I want to make sure I've got a doorway, so I can connect the corridor on later on. Again, what I can do is choose wall-less doorway, and here I want to make sure the option is none by default. Again, same as the others, and default door is not going to be the right name. I want it to be kitchen to entrance hallway. That's awesome. So that's basically my my room finished for the kitchen. So we've basically looked at the features and functions of the room editor with the 2 rooms. Oh, in fact, I'm just going to make sure the kitchen is called kitchen. And now if we go back to the project dashboard, we can see the 2 rooms there. Now what I'm going to look at, rather than go through and do all the rest of the rooms, you can install the
sample project to have a look at the rest of the reconstructions. I'm actually going to go straight through now to the tour editor, again opening it with the control button so that I can have a second tab, and we're going to have a look at how to put the rooms together into a tour. So first thing we do, the tour editor is very similar to the room editor, except that instead of images on the left hand side here, what we have is the rooms we reconstructed in the room editor. We can go back to the room editor to create new rooms with the add room button here. We've got three main different views. The plan view, which we use for assembling the tours and creating floors. The dollhouse view, which is, as you'd expect, a dollhouse view, and a preview. Dollhouse view allows us to sort of see everything in a 3D view, and then over here we've got the same kind of layout. We've got the helpers, the contextual helpers over there. So I'm going to drag out the kitchen and place it into the view, and we can see that we've got some walls. We can see the windows where we mark the windows, and we can see our panoramas. And I'm then going to drag out the downstairs office, and you'll notice that right away the two connect together. This is because we have the door between the two rooms, and they have the same name, so the tour editor knows how to connect these two together. And that is the basis of the workflow for assembling buildings and tours from rooms. Now these are both ground floor rooms, so what we might do is select them and actually create a ground floor entity. If I go back to no floor assignment, I'll see this other one, and now I can actually just select it from the list. And if we now go to ground floor, we'll see they both belong on the ground floor. And in this way we can actually have multiple floors in the plan view, as well as multiple floors in the dollhouse view. In fact, I'm going to the dollhouse view, and here we've got our 3D model that's been reconstructed from our photographs. And actually, if we go in here, we can see in closely, we can see we have the panorama bubbles. And if I click on one of them, we go into a view of that panorama bubble, and we can actually use that to, there's a little label tool here, and we can actually add a label like so, and add that to an object or to a part of the panorama, and then we click here to go back. So that allows us, that's basically the workflow for enabling for adding labels. The plan view here can be exported as an SVG, and which you can take into something like Adobe Illustrator for editing, and can be re-imported, so you can actually make it as pretty as you like, and then re-import it, re-import any SVG file, in fact, presumably the one you've improved, and you can actually choose to use the imported file in the published store instead of the generated one. And we show a little preview thumbnail of it there. We've also got the preview view. Now the preview view is a kind of a simulation of the actual tour. So we have the UI. If I hide the helper here, we have the UI we'll actually see in the resulting tour. So we've got our two rooms in our thumbnail room chooser that can be kind of squished out of the way. We actually have a measure area and measure distance tool, so we can actually go over here and go and measure areas, and they're always in the plane that we click on, so we can go and measure distances, and we've got the various views. If we go back here and switch on the helper is the UI that's not present in the final output, but it's to help us set up what the tour is going to be. So we can set a tour starting point. So in this case, I'm going to go to here, say somewhere sensible. I don't know. It's not a finished tour, but I could go to here and say set tour starting point, and that'll also be what generates the thumbnail. Down here, I can choose which tour UI components I'm going to use, so title and location, floor plan, dollhouse, rooms chooser. Choose the type of panorama locators. I might want to have the bubbles instead of the floor disc, so I can do that. And I can choose the behavior of my labels, so I can have them always visible or just on hover. There's also some other things here. I've got the range of field of view, so I can actually go in here and say, okay, well, I want to limit the how much someone can zoom in or out, so that they can't go crazy. we can actually set that so it's, they can look at a bit of detail, but it's still within the bounds of reason. And I can set the title and location, so we could say Abde Gaspe, and we could say Montreal, Montreal QC Canada. And so that appears up there. We've also got the ability to add a logo. So you can browse and just drag and drop an image file and a logo, and that will appear in the top right here. And also the ability to add a nadir image, so you can actually, so you could have both or one or the other of the nadir images. You use the nadir image for your own business, and the logo at the top for the business you're representing. That's really up to you. And that's pretty much it for the tour editor. I'm just going to name my tour. And oops, actually we didn't need to do that. We could just go back to here. So, and let's say we've now finished our tour. I'm actually going to hit publish, and here we have the title of the tour. There's a variety of platforms we're going to support, but right now you can export to HTML to WebGL. So I'm going to hit publish. That takes a few seconds to kick off. And you don't need to leave the page open. We can go back to another page while the back end is computing that. You can see we have the thumbnail here. It's listed as draft because there's nothing published in that tour yet. And the way the Publish Manager works is that you can publish as many times as you want different versions. So you'll just have a list view of all the different published versions. Each one has its own URL. So you could, for example, create a quick version, publish it, do some more work, publish another version and keep them both around. Or you can choose to refresh the published file on the current URL with the latest content in the project. You can hide it from view so it's no longer accessible. You can make it visible again. And you can create new published versions, as many as you like. So I'm going to click on that link, and this is now the published, publicly accessible version of the tour that we just created. And there it is. So I can move around my somewhat incomplete tour, and you can see it's silky smooth, and there we go. All right. So I think the one other thing to make sure to mention, I did mention it before, but I'll just remind you of, is that the sample project, which is the completed version of this project, is available if you just go into user account, go to your project browser, and just click the install sample project button. It will create install a finished version of that project that you can explore and modify at your leisure. Thank you very much.